Fantastic. Okay, great. Everybody, we're live. So I just want to start with hello healthcare. Hello LinkedIn Live. Hello. We love seeing your chats. We love seeing the communication that happens every week with the stories and information that people share. And hello, people who are out there watching on YouTube as well. I have to say that this patient experience panel number 2 is a little bit different than anything that we've ever done before. Our first patient experience panel was focused on the patient experience professional and what they can do to exact better patient experiences across whole populations. But one thing that we like to focus on is also, hey, what can we get? How can we communicate this? How can we find what's missing from individual patient experiences? Last week, I introduced this concept, the McNamara fallacy, which really quickly, that fallacy is if you're only looking at what's on your spreadsheets or what's in the big data SQL databases and everything like that, there's still possibility that you miss out on a whole lot of things. One thing that Dr. Zachary brought up last week was food insecurity wasn't being tracked in their data set. And by starting to ask that question and starting to get the insight on food insecurity and its impact on people's ability to receive great care and manage their care, they were able to deliver a better care experience and produce better outcomes. We're excited for this session too. Thank you very much. Thank you. So what we're going to do, is we're looking past all the AI algorithms and things like that, and what we're really doing, like as technologists or as leaders or as strategists, what we learn from this is things that we can take back to our own organizations or to our own approaches, whether we be directly involved in healthcare or in the communication aspect or in some sort of related technology role. There are nuggets that we can learn from these experiences that might not have been fully tracked or detailed in whatever database, and start just thinking through how we approach this differently, how we provide a better experience for care. So the way that we're going to conduct this today is a panel, and we brought on our VP of clinical platforms as well. The reason that we're excited to have Terry Tuznik here, who she works in care management platforms and in care navigation systems with Intermountain Healthcare, Honor Health, and many other health systems across the nation. But in her deep background in healthcare, she also is a registered nurse and brings a deep nursing experience as well as managing care within her family. So big hello to Terry.
Thanks so much, Chris.
And our guest of honor, our panelists today are Doug Oakes. Doug leads, is it Do or Do Design?
It's Do Design.
Do Design. Doug Oakes. Yeah, so Doug has, we thought that if we bring somebody from our own community, bring a fellow healthcare and marketing professional to talk about that experience, then there's some good insights, some good thoughts. Doug has recently had a care journey that he's going to share, and we're going to talk about his learnings from that and where we can all learn as a community. So big hello, big shout out to Doug. And Heidi Munson on our team as well has recently had a care journey that she would like to share. And her background is she has a deep background in healthcare communications and healthcare marketing as well. And it's all about just getting together, talking about these experiences, what went well, where certain things might have fallen through the cracks, and ultimately coming away from this conversation with a better perspective on what are the questions that we should be asking to know that we're delivering a great experience for our patients. All right, with that, thank you, everybody. Christopher Kim, good to see you in here. Nikon Goenka, is good to have you. Alan, thank you for coordinating this. Alan and Doug actually go back, and Alan actually introduced us to Doug to have this conversation. So Alan, we're really grateful for your contributions to this program.
Yeah.
But to get started, Doug, you're our guest of honor, and we know that a major reason that you're here is because there's a community of healthcare leaders, marketers, technologists, and strategists who can take from this conversation, take learnings from this conversation, and change healthcare for the better. Did you share your story with them?
Sure. And thank you for having me here today. It's good to see you again, Heidi, as well. And Terry, nice to meet you. As I described earlier, about a year ago, November 4th of last year, I died. I died 4 times, in fact. I had come back from a run and just sat down on my computer to map out how far I'd run and just passed out and never regained consciousness. Had a massive heart attack, the widowmaker, as they describe it. My wife discovered me. She was able to revive me the first time, and then I never regained consciousness, but she did regain pulse. Then the EMTs arrived within a matter of minutes. The EMT revived me 3 more times. First time with chest compressions, and the next 2 with the paddles, basically, to get me enough to get me to the ER. They took me back in the cath lab and did their best to clear the blockages. They were unable to. They discovered I had 2 arteries in the upper left ventricles that were completely blocked and calcified 100%. And the other 2 arteries were about 60 or 80% blocked. It was those upper lefts that they call the widowmaker. I don't remember any of that. It's all been described to me by my wife and my physicians afterwards. They initially put me in kind of a frozen sleep, a frozen coma using Arctic Sun technology, which was kind of cool. And then afterwards, they had me in basically a medically induced coma while my body repaired itself. I contracted pneumonia during the emergency session. I aspirated into my lungs. They had a lot of cleaning up that had to be done. I've been in healthcare marketing for over 30 years. And, I've promoted physicians, I've promoted nurses, I've promoted the technology capabilities of hospitals. And this is my first real experience as a patient seeing it from this side. I've always known about the amazing capabilities of physicians, the amazing compassion, and the nurses as well. And I love creating campaigns that portrayed them as heroes. This was the first time it was really personal to me, since probably when my mother was in the hospital back in the 80s. And it was very personal. When I first came to in the hospital, they described to me what had happened, where I was at, and what was going to happen next. It was then that I saw the amazing compassion of the nurses. I was so weak after being in a coma for about 3.5 weeks that, I could barely do anything. They had put I lost all bodily control. I could barely lift my arms. I was so weak. They put a pitcher of water on the nightstand next to me so I could drink water if I got thirsty. It took me an hour to get the lid off the pitcher. I timed it. It took me an hour. I was that weak. And pour myself a glass of water. I was so weak. And I remember one time I became depressed, which is very common among heart attack patients. Became, is this going to be the rest of my life? Am I going to die like this? Am I going to die here in the hospital? I was depressed. And I soiled the bed often. There's no other way. I lost bodily control. I had no control over my bodily functions. And the nurse, it was a male nurse, was a big, strong guy, and his nursing tech came in to clean me and change the bedding. And all I could do was just apologize over and over again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And finally the tech just stopped and goes, Doug, why are you apologizing? This is not something you did to me. I don't do this out of pity. This isn't just some job to me. I do this because this is how I show love for my fellow man. I was so astounded by the depth of her emotional maturity. I've never thought of it in that way before. She was an amazing young woman. And the nurse just, repeated that. It was, why they do this. this calling that the nursing profession has to do this, to care for their fellow man. I was astounded by their compassion, by their depth of love for their fellow man. It was amazing to me, and it really created a change in myself. It created a change. The next time I was laying in bed feeling depressed and I can't do this, I just said, I can either lay in this bed and die, or I can fight and get better. And I started fighting. And I decided, I'm going to show you. I will show you what I can do. I'm not going to listen to what you tell me I can do. I'm going to do everything you ask of me and more. When the therapist came in to work with me, I did everything they asked and more. And I was determined to get better. And it changed the way I looked at my fellow men and women. It was a profound change, and it was inspired by that nursing tech. She was amazing, and all the people that cared for me. It changed the way I view healthcare. It changed the way I view the professionals in healthcare, and it changed the way I see how patients view the experience, because I was living it myself.
Doug, really thankful that you shared that in the way that you shared it, because what you highlighted was the power of an event that happened within that relationship, and how that was a big impact on the way that you looked at that situation moving forward. To start this conversation, we're going to, so we've heard Doug's story, and we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the experience, but we wanted to give Heidi a chance to start off with her story and her perspective as well.
Okay, well, thanks, Chris. And Doug, thank you for sharing that. Doug and I connected earlier this week, and what was going to be a 30-minute, hey, what's your story? What's your story? How do you do? Turned into a 90-minute conversation with a friend. Because what we found started out was our journey started with a run. He was out running. He's focused on fitness. He's focused on health. I am as well. I've been really trying to get my speed up, my endurance, and manage my weight and do everything healthy. I see some friends that are chiming in. I just want to, if this is the first time you've heard this story, I apologize. I have not publicly put this out like Doug has been so brave to do. So, but this summer I went out for a run. I had just started with Symphony RM. I was maybe 2 weeks in, and I was running every day, and I have this wonderful little puppy, Ruthie, and she got away from me. She was on her leash, and she pulled hard, and I flipped over the leash. And I got up and I picked up my pride and I grabbed my dog and I stumbled home, and I was hurting on the side. And I'm fortunate to work with Terry and Janae and some other people with clinical background. And I'm like, guys, I feel like I'm bruised. There's something not right here. And they're giving me some guidance and, pushing me to go to, primary care. But here's the challenge. I had moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico in the middle of a pandemic. I lost my job in June due to a pandemic. So I was without insurance from June and into July until I started with Symphony. So July 28th, I injured myself, and my insurance kicked in on August 1st. So, which was a Saturday. So I waited until Monday, but Janae and Terry and everybody, they were great. And they're, giving me some guidance. And, it sounds like maybe that's a little bit more than a bruised body, bruised ego. Maybe you need to go to the doctor. Well, I couldn't get in. I spent the whole week prior to knowing my insurance was kicking in, calling to get to a doctor to find a primary care, because everywhere I looked, it would say we're taking patients. And I ended up going to a walk-in clinic where he saw me. And the challenge was I wasn't, after 5 days, so July 28th until now we're on August 3rd, I stopped eating. I couldn't eat. I couldn't hold food down. I couldn't hold any liquid down more than water. I stopped, and Doug, thank you for sharing. You kind of opened up, I'll share. I had the opposite problem. I stopped having bowel movements. I didn't didn't pass anything for 5 days. And I went to the doctor and he said, there's nothing I can do for you here. Go to the emergency room. So I did. And I spent all day there getting enemas and CT scans and being told, drink this, go home, you'll be fine, it'll pass. Well, nothing passed. They told me, don't come back in unless things get worse. If they say the same, just know you'll get better. Wednesday afternoon, I wasn't better. I think I called Terry and I said, I'm not better. And she said, you need to go back to the doctor. And so I called the ER and I said, do I come back in? They said, no, go to your primary. I said, I don't have a primary. They said, then go back to the doctor that saw you. I said, can you help me find a primary? They said, no, go back to the doctor that saw you. And I went back and he gave me more to drink. And I said, when I drink it, it sits, it doesn't go down. And then when I stand up, it comes out. He said, well, you have to drink. You have to find a way to drink or I can't help you. So I waited and I worked through his guidance and I tried to drink, and my husband spent 2 weeks just cleaning up vomit. And I didn't pass anything. I didn't have a bowel movement. I had no nutrition in me. I was still trying to work because I was convinced it was an injury. And by the time I finally, 2 weeks later, went to the emergency room, the doctor did another CT scan and said, you have 100% blockage. We're getting GI here. GI came in and said, we're admitting you now, and we have to find a way to decompress you. And it was overnight. I was a healthy woman. I was running. I was athletic. I was energetic. And suddenly I'm being sent to GI where they had to bring in a pediatric scope because there was so much buildup in me without being able to pass, that all they had wanted to do was be able to get something down there and decompress me, which meant putting a tube from my colon through my nose, which I lived with for 6 days while I was in the hospital. And they rushed me in the middle of the night from one hospital to another so that I would have emergency surgery the next morning. When I was going under for surgery, I was advised that they were quite certain that it was cancer, that I would probably wake up with an ostomy bag. And my husband, because it was COVID, was not there for that conversation. I think I texted Terry and I think I chatted with Janae too, because they could talk, they could help me understand what was going on. I went to, the next morning, Mike came to the hospital. I went down for surgery. There's all kinds of things that happened there in the experience. But as I was going down, I was crying, thinking, I'm going to wake up as a 50-year-old woman with an ostomy bag. And the anesthesiologist held my hand and said, I'm going to take care. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Heidi. It's okay. This is hard.
So when I woke up, they said, looks like it's clear. We got it 100%. It's all gone. And I was grateful, and I was in for another, I think, 7 or 8 days. But I still hadn't gotten a full diagnosis. You know, I had this wonderful nurse practitioner who said, you know, I see that your biopsy came back clear. That's great. But I also see what the GI said. I'm not allowing you to go home until oncology has done a workup and you're established with oncology. So she kept me an extra day. She got me established. I'm still believing that I'm clear. I have a clean biopsy until 2 weeks later when I go to my oncology appointment. My doctor sat down with me, not realizing that nobody had told me that I'd been just diagnosed with a stage 2 colon cancer. And that's when I heard, when he started talking to me about my treatment options. And I didn't even know that I was a cancer survivor. That's the story. I mean, there's more that we'll go through, you know, as we go through this conversation and the journey. But the caregivers were amazing. They took good care. But the communication and helping me navigate that was terrifying. And if I didn't have the benefit of working in healthcare, specifically in patient engagement, you know, and having Terry and having Janae and having wonderful leadership who, you know, my CEO texted me every day I was in the hospital, and Shatal was, you know, right there by my side. but I didn't feel that from the healthcare system, the system itself. The individual caregivers, absolutely.
So number one, I want to thank you both for your bravery and sharing your story, because this is all of us. In a minute, in an instant, our life can change. We can have that heart attack. We can get that diagnosis of cancer. And my why is, the reason that I am actually here at this company is because we can do better with data, with navigators, with the technology to reach out. We can do so much better. Heidi, you're just one of many friends that I'm kind of on this cancer journey. And it's amazing that sometimes I'm the first person to tell them they have cancer. I had a friend post something on social media last week who said, "Can someone read a biopsy report?" And I said, "I can." And she texted it to me. And what should have been a physician or advanced practitioner conversation with a patient happened because she posted something on social media. We as healthcare providers can do better. And I also want to say thank you so much to all the caring doctors and nurses that are out there. You're amazing. And right now, with the pressures that you have from taking care of COVID patients and all of the other responsibilities, the stress and pressure that you're under, God bless you. You're amazing. But as healthcare practitioners communicating with our patients, we have to do better. It shouldn't be that you're lost because you got this terrible diagnosis. And now, especially with COVID, when your family members can't even be with you, people are, even if you have a conversation with that patient, when I'm under stress or anybody's under stress, I don't remember the details that someone says to me. So we have to be better, especially now. So,
Terry, oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, you.
You mentioned the details. There's a lot of information that I got while I was sitting in that doctor's office. There is so much to read that it's overwhelming.
Yes.
I will, and I should share the happy. Sorry, I am 100% cancer free. They did say, it takes 12. They want to clear 12 lymph nodes, but they cleared 22. So I am cancer free. That's the good news. I went overnight from never even believing I had cancer to all of a sudden I'm a cancer survivor. So I'm still working through that transition. But there's a lot of information, Terry, you're right. And reading through it and understanding it on my own, if I didn't have friends that could help me with it, I would be in a far worse place than I am right now.
Yeah, I wanted to just share a quick story. I'm actually away from home right now. I'm in another state because I have a friend who was diagnosed in January with liver cancer, and my friend is late 60s. And I think there's the mentality, I know I used to have it, which is the doctor's going to take care of me. And so he went to the hospital, got the diagnosis of advanced liver cancer, went home with the expectation of someone will call me. No one called them. So I picked up the phone and I said, "What's going on?" And it took about 20, 30 phone calls to kind of piece through who he should see, what he should do. So this is such a common scenario where people get this very horrific diagnosis and then there's no path. So what do they do? And hopefully, I know, Chris, you've got some additional questions on this, but I think as healthcare providers, we have to think about that. This is a life-changing event. What happens to that patient? Their whole life has changed. How do we help them in that journey so that they're getting the right care at the right time? And so either we're helping them have a good rest of their life or we're getting them into the right treatments to get them well. So we have to think about that as healthcare marketing, IT, and providers. We have to do better.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to just give some appreciation to the viewers and the audience. I've been popping up these comments that were extremely positive and extremely supportive. And this was a difficult conversation to plan and to have. And we thank you for reassuring our panelists and everybody today for being open to having this conversation. Heidi, a question did come in for you from Nikunj Goenka, which was, if I may ask, while all this was going on and you're dealing with these various challenges, how did you manage the anxiety that must have caused?
It's funny that question came up. I've got a very specific answer for that. Fitbit and Nurse Terry.
Oh.
It was, you know, I've been fortunate that, you know, through COVID and everything, the stress is just a normal part of our lives. But, you know, I manage my stress up until this situation. I've been pretty good at managing my stress. I've got a great support system at home. I've got good friends. I know my numbers. You know, I know what my heart rate needs to be. I know that I have a good, strong, healthy heart rate. And I know that that's a real indicator of stress. And when I started seeing my resting heart rate skyrocket, with the stress, once I got off the drugs, you know, off of the painkillers and really started feeling things again, I got really scared because I started feeling my body different. I felt, I saw my numbers changing, and I called Terry. I said, "Hey, Nurse Terry, you know, being that you're my champion right now," because Janae was, you know, I don't have that with a provider yet. I said, "What do I do?" And she said, "You need to be mindful." She said, "You're going through a lot of stress and you need to take some time, and you need to recognize that, and you need to, you know, try meditation, try mindfulness activities." So the second the new Fitbit came out that had the mindfulness in it and all of that, I got it, and I set reminders to just take the time and get within my own head and tell myself that I'm strong. But you know, I'm not getting that help. And it is a good question, because I've wondered, it's like, you know, at some point this stress is going to hit me. The realization of what's happened is really going to hit me. I said, you know, I mentioned I went from being healthy to being a cancer survivor literally in a matter of 2 weeks, and not having the opportunity to take all that in. And I'm waiting for that to hit, and I'm afraid for when that hits. And I'm looking for tools for that. You know, it's not out there. You know, there's a stack of papers. There's, hey, you can join a Zoom support group if you want. Here's some things to look at. But there's not a ton right now where, other than my peer group and my friends, I don't feel supported in that, in the stress management, in the post. In fact, I was given a referral as I left the hospital. I was given a referral for home health. They were going to come in and help me adjust to new life. And they didn't call the day that they were supposed to. And so I called them the second day, and they said, "Great, we'll have intake call you." And that was in August, and they still haven't called. I've adapted on my own. So it's that's the frustrating thing for me, is while I was there, it was the most important thing in the world. And I'm, you know, if we want to talk about our, just where we are, you know, I would be considered a care gap. They just changed the recommendations for colonoscopy from age 50. It's not finalized yet, but from age 50 to age 45. I turned 50 in June. And I was diagnosed with stage 2 in July. If I would have waited until I was 50, it would have been, well, it was missed. But this isn't a failure of, you know, the insurance company not engaging me. I didn't have the insurance at the time. Now, maybe earlier with a former insurance company, and it's not my health system because I didn't have a provider. What was scary was I couldn't get to a provider. It was terrifying. And now, after the fact, you guys will be happy. I finally am I will be established as of next week with primary care, but it's taken that long, and I did it on my own.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you sharing this story. And what we're focusing on doing here is not just looking at it overall, but talking about it from several different angles. So the next question that we had, I wanted to direct this at Doug, was really, so we heard some highlights from the first part of the conversation. How would you describe your experience in a way that, like, what went well with the experience that you had?
I had some negative ones too, but the well stuff was really my treatment in the ICU when I, in that first month, and then that week I was in rehab. The treatment was fantastic. I can't say enough good about the professionals in healthcare. I think for me, the downside was what happened when I left the care of the hospital. The aftercare was really poor. Like Heidi, I was uninsured. I was in that gap between leaving a position and starting my own company, and I wasn't yet making income, so I had no insurance. There was about a gap there, and then I was hit with a heart attack. So I kind of, it's like I told my wife when I came to in the hospital, I said, this is going to ruin this. And she just looked at me and said, thank God we live in a state where they care more about your well-being than they do and how much money you make. And I was really grateful to the state of California. We have a fantastic Medicaid program called Medicaid, and they stepped in and filled the gap. I was really concerned that I wasn't going to get adequate care. I was able to find a primary care physician that accepted my insurance, and he's been fantastic. But really, it was that cardiologist link that I was missing. I knew I needed bypass surgery, and how was I going to get it? I reached out to an old friend of mine from my last hospital where I worked as director of marketing in New Mexico, and Dr. Norman Ratliff, and he was so gracious to me. He was so kind to me. And he reviewed my case. He reviewed my cath lab DVD, and he urged me to find a cardiologist that would get me this surgery. And I told him I wasn't able to do that. He took it on himself, and he reached into all of his contacts. He fought for me to get me contacted and connected with a great cardiologist here in Fresno, Dr. John Ambrose at UCSF. And this guy, is a rock star cardiologist, and he got me in within a week. And he's another one like Dr. Norman Ratliff that just, he cares about the patient. And Dr. Ambrose just really, I knew as soon as I met with him that this physician is going to care for me. He's going to take care of me. He's going to fight for me. And he did. Within a matter of weeks, he got me scheduled with a cardiothoracic surgeon, and Dr. Robert Stewart, and just a fantastic surgeon. And they got me scheduled for bypass surgery just as quick as could happen. In the age of COVID, surgeries like this don't just happen at the drop of a dime anymore. It's really, there's a lot going on now. They ended up getting me into the Fresno Heart and Surgical Hospital because still to this day, the hospitals aren't taking in what they call elective surgery.
Right.
It's amazing. This is something I need. I'm going to die if I don't get it. But they fought the battle for me. These two physicians, this cardiologist and this cardiothoracic surgeon, fought this fight for me to get me lined up for surgery, get me in the hospital, and get me the surgery I needed. And there was a lot of drama behind that too. And it was, thank God they did, because from the time I was discharged from the hospital last December to when I finally had surgery in August 31st, my heart was beginning to decline. Even though I had done the best I could to improve my health through changing my diet, through regular exercise, my heart was beginning to decline. And, it was no longer functioning normally. And, they saved my life. This surgeon was amazing. They really did save my life. And I'm so grateful. Kind of like Heidi, though, it's like there were some care gaps that happened. And, that's one thing I wish healthcare could change, but, we're not there yet. I'm very grateful to the ACA. I don't care what your political thoughts are on the program. It saved my life. And I think that story needs to be told. So
Doug, when you shared your story, and Heidi as well, you talk about two very important people in the process, Terry Tuznik, Dr. Norman Ratliff. It occurs to me that if those relationships hadn't been there, if you hadn't known, that there could have been completely different outcomes and ways that this moved forward. And I like Paula Cottrell's comment here that just praises you guys for sharing these stories about where the healthcare continuum fails, because it does seem like a flimsy foundation if it requires complete expert navigation to even understand when and how to be seen. So Heidi, I wanted to follow up that, like we're looking at different angles of this story. So with these complexities, how would you describe the provider organization's navigation through this care scenario?
I wouldn't, actually. I feel like my care was obvious second to COVID. The doctor that I would see didn't have an answer for me. The health system, the emergency room didn't want me there. And it wasn't until I went in and pushed and from advice from friends, and they did the CT scan and they found it. Then all of a sudden everything became chaotic in my brain, watching what was happening, seeing the way people were talking. But I felt through all of it, because I'm a process person in healthcare, so I do need to qualify that. Maybe the regular person not growing up in patient engagement, but I saw myself as a process within the process. The people really struggling to care for me because they had to care for everybody else, and everybody was hurting. The man in the room next to me kept yelling, "Nurse, nurse," because he couldn't figure out how to use his button. That went on for 3 days. And nobody just sat with him to see if his button was broken. It was the navigation right now during COVID felt lost to me. And my journey leaving the hospital, I won't talk about, the lady who came into my room when I had the NG tube up my nose, draining my body, asking me for a $500 down payment. But as I was being wheeled out of the hospital, the only communication I had from the hospital was sitting in a wheelchair in the parking lot with the orderly while my husband went to get the car, and the billing office called me again and asked me for a $500 down payment, to which I had to say, "I don't have my purse. It's at home. I'm sitting in your parking lot waiting to go home," and had to ask them if they could call me the next day so I could pay. That was the communications that I was getting from the process and from navigation. And post navigation, I got a call not from my health system, but from my insurer asking me if I wanted a nurse navigator. And I said, absolutely. So they set up an appointment when would work well for me after 5 on a Tuesday. And they called me the next day at 2, and then the next day at 9, and I'm in meetings. So then I got a letter saying, "We're sorry, this didn't work out for you." I don't feel like there was navigation of my journey. I don't feel like there is now, other than what I'm seeking myself. And I do I do have to say it's got to be on me, because I'm one of hundreds of thousands, and they don't have time to help me with that. So that's on me.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that, Heidi. I do think, so Chris, you hit on a key point, which is, as a patient, we shouldn't have to know a doctor or a nurse to be able to understand our journey. So I guess I would say a few things. Number one, communicating, Doug, you had a heart attack and that led to a bypass. The whole cardiac, I used to be a cardiac care nurse. There's a journey there, right? You your life changed, you had a heart attack. Now you have to have this major surgery, which is scary because, you know, am I going to survive this surgery? Then I have to go into cardiac rehab. I have to be on medications I was never on before. You were a healthy running person. And so understanding what that journey looks like is important. And understanding with the diagnosis of cancer, okay, here are the things you need to do. And it's not just, it's about, number one, having better patient outcomes because you have now let the patient know what to expect. But it's also financial. I know I hate the financial aspects, but that is part of healthcare. It's also financially better because a patient who understands this is the process, this is where I need to go, this is what's going to happen to me, is less likely to go to the wrong setting for care because they understand their journey. Education is important because if I understand, okay, these are the side effects of my medications, nothing to worry about, I'm okay. I'll call the doctor and let them know, but I don't need to go to the emergency room. Again, so navigating and having the right education and setting up the patient to understand their journey, such a critical thing that we as health systems have to do. You know, I wanted to throw one more thing in. We've been working with Intermountain Kidney Care organization. We had a little online luncheon a few weeks ago, and they said, you know, because they are so proactive in their outreach to their patients, the patients every day say, chronic kidney disease, it's a terrifying thing, but you have come to me, you've given me the right education, you're contacting me on regular intervals, so you're in this with me, and I feel that, and it makes such a huge difference in their lives. So it's just something, you know, to think about as healthcare organizations are out there.
As a reminder, a big portion of why we're doing this, a big reason that we're doing this, is so that we can surface comments, thoughts, and even questions that help lead to better healthcare outcomes with the strong community of strategists, leaders, technologists that we have on board. And this comment from Laurel Skirko is representative of that, because it's a book that, hey, some of us might not know about it. I didn't personally know about it, but now that's a recommendation to identify what's the role that that people in administrative positions can play to help with these different care scenarios. So what we've touched on so far was Heidi and Doug's overall story, what went well, and the challenges of navigating through that care process. And Terry, I actually have to pause and write down what you said, that as a patient, we shouldn't have to know a doctor or a nurse personally to receive good care. That's absolutely one of the things that I was hoping would come out of this. So again, we're looking at this story, but we're looking at it from different angles. So Doug, the question that I wanted to ask you is, we talked about what went well, but could you talk about what the health system could have done to deliver a better experience for you?
You know, to me, the experience wasn't bad. There was very little communication, kind of like what Heidi said. About the only communication I really got from the hospital or from my physicians is I get an invitation to sign up for, you know, an online portal where I can look at my, you know, my tests, which I don't understand, to looking at bills, things like that. But, you know, there really was no communication either before, after, or during the whole process, except for what was delivered by the nurse one-to-one, or the physician. You know, I think that's a shortcoming. You know, I remember, you know, the years of marketing, you know, talking to patients is not something you do, you know, as soon as they leave a place. It's something you do throughout the continuum of their care. And, you know, there seems to be very little of that going on these days. And I don't know, you know, all you ever hear from a hospital now is COVID. You know, and that's a shortcoming. I will say this, that, you know, there was one incident. I was in a coma. I had a breathing tube, and I was supposed to be under restraints. They removed the restraints, I guess, to clean the bed or whatever, change the bedding. And I fell, and the breathing tube came unattached. So I was without oxygen. I don't know for how long. And the nurse was not forthright with my wife, and my wife called her on that. She literally pulled out a tape measure and said, "Well, let's just see about that." And she said, "It's physically impossible for him to have fallen out of bed and the breathing tube not come." And within a matter of minutes, administration responded quickly because A, it was a fall. B, I was a patient that was, my wife had to go through all kinds of legal documents to say, yes, it's okay to restrain him. So there were a lot of issues, but to their credit, administration responded. They responded quickly, and they took care of every issue my wife had. To their credit, and everybody from the CNO to the chief of ICU to the head nurse, and they made sure that my wife's concerns were answered. There was a lot of communication that happened. I don't remember any of this. I'll tell you a funny story. When I did finally come to, I said something about my wife to the nurse, and the nurse goes, "I'm afraid of your wife." And why are you afraid of my wife? We're all afraid of your wife. My wife is the sweetest woman, just Southern girl from Jacksonville, Florida. But I mean, don't mess with her. Little stories like that happened, but there were a lot of really good positive things too. Like this happened over the Thanksgiving holiday, and they let my wife bring in a homemade Thanksgiving dinner and set out an area in the cafeteria for us to have a family dinner together. Little things like that they didn't have to do. The hospital did, and it was really touching. I mean, I spent the whole night before Thanksgiving awake, couldn't sleep. I was in tears over it because I wasn't going to be able to see my oldest daughters. And they live in Georgia. And I came downstairs, and both my daughters were there at the table, and I just started crying. Little things like that is what I remember. The things that touch you as a patient, touch your life. You don't remember like how did it feel when you got a shot. You remember how they treated you.
Yeah.
And those are stories that need to be told. If you want to know the real truth about healthcare, you need to hear it from the patient.
Yes.
Yeah, Doug, the way that you told that story, it just made me think of, as a technologist, and as we're in administrative positions, we're looking for things that scale. But these stories are the moments that really impacted your vision on healthcare. So I really appreciate the way that you shared that. And it gets me thinking too, and we're getting some great comments. Claudia Otero, while we were talking about healthcare literacy barriers, there's also language barriers as well. And it exacerbates that question of why should we have to know nurses or doctors to be able to receive the kind of care that we need. Unfortunately, folks, we are coming close to time, but there are some questions that we wanted to cover just to help with like the concepts of who we have here, who we have gathered. What are some things, some takeaways that we'd be able to do to go and make changes within healthcare? So Heidi, especially given your experience with healthcare technologies and communications and things like that, I'm curious, what role do you think that marketers and technologists can play in delivering the improvements and the better experiences, more connected experiences that we're talking about?
Well, so that's a great question, Chris. And when you talk about marketers and you talk about technologists, I want to talk just to the marketers, because they're the ones who have those technologies and have those tools for patient engagement. And I think they should get involved. I think they should talk to the clinical people in the health system and say, what are your patients experiencing that if you could communicate 30 seconds, twice a week or however often, how can we help? I think that technology is powerful. Obviously, I'm biased. I've been in patient engagement tech for 10 years, so it's kind of coincidental that it comes back and hits me this way. But I think that they need to ask questions, and I think they need to insert themselves into the conversation, not just, operationally, but at an executive level. I think they need to speak up and say, we can be the voice for your patients, and we can communicate, and we can give them education, and we can, take that big stack of information that they have to read and make it digestible. How can we help? And I don't know, but just talking with some of them, I feel like maybe they don't feel empowered. And so, the non-marketing people, the executives, understand that the patients, your staff is amazing. They are. The woman who my husband sat for 7 hours, they couldn't get an update on my surgery, but she brought him a ham sandwich because if he went outside of the hospital, he couldn't come back. Those are the people that are out there trying to do it, and they need help.
Yeah.
That was a great response in terms of, hey, there's already technology available, a lot of tools in their tool belt that could automate some outreach or help with patient engagement. So I appreciate you sharing that focus. Also, we got a couple more great comments. Brian Cunningham, I can tell Brian knows a lot about storytelling because he brought up the Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. And I like the way he highlighted how y'all are showing your heroic journeys. And Miona Short from Redox actually said, great question. So I know.
Hey, Miona. Good to see a friend.
Awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate everybody joining and sharing these comments and hearing us out through these stories. Really, we want to close it out with a round of final thoughts. I'm just interested, like I know that everybody came here probably with a reason or something that you wanted to get out of the conversation. If you wouldn't mind, just share that with the chat. I'd love to see what you were hoping to get out of this conversation. And at the same time, Doug, Heidi, and Terry all had different perspectives that they wanted you to leave with as well. So just wanted to go around the room and just, hey, if there's one thing you want the leaders, strategists, the people that we have on this call today to go away with and be able to do, what would that be, Doug?
There's really two things. One is storytelling. The incredible power of storytelling is there's probably no other industry like healthcare where we've got these amazing stories, and let your patients be your storyteller. You've got a great story to tell. You've got amazing people that are carrying your message every day. They're living your brand, and your patients are going to be your greatest ambassadors for that. Let them tell their story and broadcast it in a lot of different ways. Be consistent with it. The other thing too is this thing that Heidi brought up. Marketers need to be at the table. There are 4 P's in marketing: price, product, place, and promotion. And most people just want to concentrate on that last P. There's a lot of work that goes on in marketing before you ever get to promoting or telling a story or running an ad or getting out a press release. There's engagement that needs to be happening from a marketing perspective. They need input into how's that product delivered? What is that product? I've got suggestions from a patient perspective that really are impacting marketing. They're impacting your total business strategy. I know Heidi does too. We've both talked about this. There are specific things that businesses need to be taken into account. It's mission critical for healthcare. Everybody wants to talk about the patient experience and patient satisfaction. Where is the breakdown? I was in this amazing facility that had amazing physicians and amazing caregivers, and yet their ranking on CMS is terrible. Where's the breakdown? I've got some ideas on that, but I see that in a lot of hospitals. Marketing needs to have a place at the table.
I 100% agree that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much too, Terry. I wanted to get from you on that too, on where, hey, what could people leave this conversation with?
Well, I think again, we're talking about an event that someone's life has completely changed, and they are now on a journey. And if you're an inpatient facility, you may only be thinking about the care there, but they are on a full journey that encompasses everything. And we have the tools and the technology to help them with that journey. So just think about the impact that you can have, not just on the patient in the inpatient setting, but on the patient throughout, and whether that's eventually to hospice or to a full cure and they're better, or something they have to live with for the rest of their life, or they'll be interacting with you. What tools can we use to make that journey better? That's my quotes.
And Heidi, from you.
So I think that everybody here is somehow connected to healthcare. I mean, we're all patients. If you're not directly part of healthcare, I think that as the world changed, we all need to be advocates. Patient advocates, when you have the opportunity, again, to Terry's, I had a friend who helped me. I had a couple friends who helped me through it. But I think that everybody has the ability to be advocating for patients, the center. And so whether you're in marketing or you're in operations, you're in billing, keep in mind that there's a person and a person's family on the other end, and advocate for them and help them when they say they need help.
Well, again, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you all for sharing the stories and then various perspectives on those stories that can help people think through what types of questions to ask or how to engage with their markets. I think that there is a need for even potentially a reframing of how we look at the marketing and patient engagement role. Because if we look at it as a potential revenue generator, I mean, which there's that aspect there, but the communications that we receive set the frame and the tone for how we engage and manage our own care. So if we look at the outreach tools and engagement tools that marketing has at the table, how can we use that to reframe care processes and care journeys and help aim at better outcomes? Doug, you just got me thinking on that by saying that marketing deserves a seat at the table, needs a seat at the table. Well, it would hopefully go to that outcomes directed journey once marketing gets there. But folks, that's time for us. This is the second patient experience panel, not the last. So there's different angles, there's different perspectives that we want to share with you, and we appreciate you coming here on a weekly basis. Next week, we'll be doing a more marketing-focused conversation with the healthcare. I'm not sure if you heard the Marketing Over Coffee podcast, but Christopher Penn, who leads that, it just has a lot of experience, a lot of perspective outside of healthcare. So we wanted to bring in a data science and AI marketing leader to just share some thoughts that are going on outside of healthcare and see where we can start thinking about that through our own engagement journeys. Again, thank you everybody very much. Thank you for your participation. We appreciate you, and we'd love to see you again soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.